Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our third APWF webinar. My name is Yumiko Asayama, manager of Japan Water Forum. I am also taking care of the Secretariat of the Asia Pacific Water Forum. This APWF webinar is organized as a part of important preparation of the fourth APWS. Today, we welcome Professor Shahbaz, Director, UNESCO Regional Science Bureau for Asia and the Pacific, which is also UNESCO office, Jakarta, Indonesia. He will deliver the charting water pathway for greener recovery options. Firstly, before we welcome Professor Khan, I would like to introduce how to organize this Zoom technical system. Today, we will have opening remarks from Mr. Ravi Narayanan, our APWF Governing Council Chair, and the presentation from Professor Khan. Professor Khan will deliver about 25 minutes presentation. Followed by his presentation, we will organize Q&A session. In Q&A session, if you would like to ask questions to Professor Khan, please click the raise hand button. Then our secretariat will notice and acknowledge you ask a question. Then we also welcome ask question on the Q&A box during his presentation. Then we will respond to your question. If time was limited, Professor Khan will kindly respond to your question after our webinar by email. Thank you so much for your identification of our today's webinar. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Ravi Narayanan. He is chair of APWF Governing Council. Ravi, floor is for yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning all, and very welcome. Let me add my words of welcome to those of Yumiko to the third Asia Pacific Water Forum webinar on recharging water pathways for greener recovery option. A shadow is hanging over the world today, the shadow of the COVID pandemic. When the shadow lifts, as it will, how do we are at a crossroads, and what path do we take? And Professor Shahbaz Khan is going to tell us some of his ideas on what might be the appropriate way to go forward. I don't need to introduce Dr. Khan in great detail because he is not only a scholar, he's an academic of great repute in this region, associated with professional bodies in Australia, New Zealand, Myanmar, Malaysia, and the ASEAN region. Professor Khan, above all, is a Renaissance man who's not only an eminent hydrologist, but he's also a person who has got a background in environmental law, economics, and international diplomacy. As I said, very much a Renaissance man. One thing marks Professor Khan from the general run of academics is he's not a man who just is content with pontificating. He's a man with the feet on the ground and who believes in practical solutions. You will hear more about this when Dr. Khan tells us about his ideas and his vision going forward. Dr. Khan, it gives me great pleasure to invite you to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ravi, and thank you very much, Ms. Yumiko. It's really an honor to be invited by the Asia Pacific Water Forum, which I believe is the right body to coordinate water management across Asia Pacific, bringing many stakeholders, and I'm sure many of them have joined us on this Zoom session today. Let me share some slides with you so that we can have some background on the thoughts about what is going on in the area of water, from where UNESCO is working and UNESCO's partners are working. and then we can have a very lively discussion. Okay, so I thought I'd talk about recharting water pathways, because we are going, as Ravi has introduced, through these very testing times. Many things which we never experienced before, we have experienced in our lifetimes. And this is the time for us to think about many things, including our lives, the way we live on this planet, how we consume the resources, our sustainability of our jobs, our families, our environments in which we live. And as water people, this is the time for us to think about water pathways, where we have been, where we are now, and where should we go. So let's first capture some of the mega trends in Asia. And I'm sure you will agree with me today that one of those mega trends is we are living in the times of global connectivity and pandemics. COVID has shown us how vulnerable our systems are. While we have enjoyed a period in which we could go anywhere in the world at any time, it will have been now difficult. Our air connectivity is no more the same, but our virtual connectivity has become even more important than ever, like this Zoom webinar today. And we have to find solutions together. That's where within the United Nations system, UNESCO introduced open science concept, that the benefits of science must reach everyone. Science as a human right, and same applies to benefits of our thinking and understanding of sustainability. Also, we are in this era where balancing growth with sustainability is a challenge. We know how rapidly our region, many of our great nations have grown, but are we on a sustainable path? Fourth industrial revolution, as we were just discussing, it's already here. And how fourth industrial revolution has changed the way we live, our jobs, and now combined with the pandemic. Asia is on the rise, and certainly the economies like China, Indonesia are going very fast. And also, of course, the countries who have been developing very rapidly, and they have to think very carefully about sustainability. Countries, for example, like Malaysia, countries like Pakistan, Indonesia, India, all of them have to think about different trajectories into future. But one of the challenges has been that as we embark on 2030 agenda and sustainable development goals, we have not progressed as much on the environmental SDGs, which I will show you today. And then we hit the pandemic. Plastic pollution is a very big challenge for all of us. Plastic pollution of our cities, our waterways, our oceans, combined with the rapid urbanization. We have 8 of the world's 10 largest mega cities in our region, like, as you know, the cities like Karachi, for example, cities like Jakarta, cities like Manila. So they are presenting their own challenges. And of course, we are home to more than 60% of world population. With this in mind, let's think about where we were before the pandemic hit us. This is from SDG Gateway, which is hosted by UNESCAP, and it is a collection of data from many different sources. I invite you to visit ESCAP website, and you can also dig deep into the data itself. Here, the 17 SDGs, as we look through them, from 2000 to 2019 and the target of 2030. And you can see some areas are blue, but they're not blue to the extent of 2019. So the progress on none of the SDGs is close to where it should be. Maybe some areas are more advanced, like quality education, SDG number 4. But certainly SDG number 6, a long way to go, the SDG related to clean water and sanitation, and we will be discussing more about that. And also the challenges related to responsible consumption and production, SDG number 12. And that's where water is also part of that. And the climate related SDG 13, again in red, and life below water related to oceans and life on land. So we have a major challenge. And that challenge we have to think very carefully. COVID, while it is a very big problem for all of us, it has helped us slow down and to rethink where we have been, where we are, and where we should go. So if you think about 2000, 2019, and 2020, in 2020, where should we go from now on towards 2030? So that's what my presentation's focus is today. Let's look into some of the UN policy briefs which are coming. And if you would like to see the full briefs about water, about development, the progress on socioeconomic side, there is a link here. By the way, my presentation is available there are no copyrights. You're most welcome to use it as you like, and you can ask Ms. Yumiko to give you a copy. So these are some of the things mentioned in those briefs. Underemployment and unemployment is on the rise. That's very big, 1.6 billion people. Also, there is a very stark reality that more than 70 million people may be pushed back into extreme poverty. While we were making progress, COVID comes, and if those people go back to the extreme poverty, and this is the first time since 1998. So this is a very big challenge. Social inequalities, the difference between rich and poor, difference between advanced and less advanced cities and countries, and the capacities of local government are certainly under greatest stress ever. So we have big challenges, and also the challenge for the slum dwellers worldwide. They have a problem of housing, they have a problem of running water, shared toilets, the issues related to waste management, and of course, public transport. Like, for example, in cities like Jakarta, one of our biggest concerns for the people to go to their work is going through the public transport, and all those health issues are on the rise. And as climate change reality still exists, and many people think maybe because there is less air traffic, there is a lesser issue of the climate change and environment. Unfortunately, that's not true. This is still continuing, and we have to continue to think very hard. UNESCO organized a meeting with the megacities and looked into some of the megacity aspects with the water managers, the policy makers, and I would like to share some of them with you. And this bigger report is available on UNESCO's Intergovernmental Hydrological Program website. So, key observations from those megacities coming together, top experts coming together. So first of all, there is a major challenge for water from the point of view of businesses and from the point of view of production of water. But overall, there is a change in the water consumption patterns. So first is residential water consumption have increased because we have been living in our apartments, in our houses. But the industry and commercial sector demand has decreased 23 to 34%, which maybe there is less demand, so we need less water. But the problem is if there is less demand from industry and commercial, the people being pushed into poverty, they will be pushed even further. So that's a problem as well. And the domestic water use going up by 11%. That's where we have to carefully think about, is this water going through the right channels? Is there a problem of leakages? How do we actually continue if the scenario into future is that we will be working more from homes, then maybe the demand for water from homes can be much bigger than where we are now. So also we have to carefully think about the bigger cities, and here we have examples from Istanbul, Lima, Karachi, Tehran, which we will be able to share with you through some of the questions which have been asked. So, of course, the priority has been we must maintain water supplies to the people back in their homes, but this has been aggravated by insufficient capability of the utilities. And there are examples like big cities like Mexico, Lagos, as you know, from Latin America, and in Nigeria, where the facilities may not have been enough. For example, in Karachi, there has been major shortage of water supplies. And also there has been issues of non-revenue water, the issues related to pollution. In Tehran also there has been short-term shortages of water. So it's not that while people go back and there is a rise in the domestic water demand, the system is simply not able to cope with this situation. So I gave you the example of the Mexico City, 125,000 people, no access to grid water in their household. So imagine people living back in their homes, they are unable to access water. People living in the slums, in shared facilities, no water, and COVID situation. Can we really be healthy again? In Jakarta, 37% of the population not connected to piped water. And 0.8 million out of 10 million inhabitants in Lima were supplied water with water trucks instead of the piped water. Karachi, Sao Paulo, water services to slum and informal settlement become a big challenge. This is something we have to dig deeper and understand and think carefully, where should we put investments? And these responses continue, and that's where there has been urgent access means provided, like water kiosks and hand washing stations, water coming through trucks, also providing water by restricting other uses of water like the industrial water, and also the issues related to disinfection and monitoring of the water supply and water treatment, the role of science and scientists, and also finding of the RNA of the virus into sewage to looking into hotspots. So many of those examples have come forward. And certainly the role of water and water science and understanding the water cycle has become more important than ever. And the water quality from the point of view of disinfection is much bigger. Let's look into some of the results of the survey. And if we look into what has been reported from the experts group, that water utility operations reduction of staff is a major issue during COVID-19 in terms of the influence of the water services. So up to 60% water utility operations affected because of the reduced staff and disruption of services. Water revenue reduction is there as well. And I know in many cases, governments have given certain facilities for people to pay bills later. And that may be okay for, if you think at the mega level, but for the utilities and looking into the public-private partnerships or the private utilities, that can be a major effect. Also, water supply services reduction from quantity, as well as the water treatment reduction as well. Then if we look into the importance of water security, water availability from the point of view of daily needs, water security is a much broader concept, as we know, also from the disasters security point of view. What people think, this is the response from 165 of the top experts. So they think like more than 80% of them think that water security is most important if we have to combat the COVID-19. And then there are 19% who think about other issues along with water, and something, maybe 1% think that this is not so much important. But the moral of the survey is that it is a key if we have to come back to some new normal. Also, if we look into the other issues from this survey, what are the big challenges linked with water at the city level? So the topmost one is more than 60% is economy affected at the city level. And we know many people living with almost minimum. I know people who have been supporting each other through social support by somebody has some food, they share with others. And sharing minimum of the supplies. Social welfare is very badly affected. Of course, we have e-education, but there are still challenges with the infrastructure. Also livelihood from the point of food, from the point of shelter, clothes, all of them have been reported. And of course, environment is reported, but environment is not on the minds of people as much as economy. So this is a critical part of the survey I would like to draw your attention. But unless we have environment in proper order, we cannot provide for a better economy. Also looking into some of the disruptions from the COVID-19, and of course, people strongly think that this has disrupted many of the services. There has been modest to medium impact reported in 22%, but mostly 38% think there is a much bigger impact. In few cases, like it is minimal impact, and in very few cases, there is a major disruption or closing. So there has been impact reported on the water services. Actions from COVID-19 in terms of what has been done by the water industry, like with other areas of our economy, staff has been working remotely. There has been increased sanitary safety requirements. There has been billing services suspended. There has been wastewater monitoring to track COVID-19 from the RNA. There has been staff reduction. So water industry is also impacted, very similar to all other sectors of the economy. Where should we go from here? So if we look into what has been reported, the number one is we must integrate public health into water management. One health concept, environmental health, human health, animal health, bring it together. So public health should be major consideration into future as we rechart our water supply, water demand, water resilience. Also, we need to have reliable access to water, safe water for vulnerable populations, especially consider those slums where people are already living in very difficult situations. And now with this situation, if there is lesser water available, they would be most affected. Also, build resilient infrastructure, bring green, gray, as well as backup water supply systems. And that's where we need to think about the whole system, rural, urban together, the bigger water management cycle, and looking into operational resilience, the staff training, the crisis management, putting in place the protocols, and also looking into how can we accelerate digital parts, digital economy from monitoring as many of those staffs who are not being able to go and do the monitoring. So let me now very quickly come to a very important part, which is WASH, water and sanitation. Water and sanitation is basically a basic human right since 2010 by the UN General Assembly. And if it is a basic human right, and what I've shown you with the megacities and the surveys, so many have left on or have been left out on their basic human right. Our progress on SDGs is not as remarkable as it should be. But I would like to also say that while we are saying that with COVID, washing hands is one of the safest ways to avoid this pandemic, which is the hygiene part, we have really not considered hygiene as part of our plans as seriously. So let me quickly go through some of the data collected for you from different sources. So here is some of WHO information. If we look into basic drinking water, and if we look into the world and we look into our region, so on the basic drinking water, significant, I would say, progress has been made. While still there are countries who are struggling. For example, here you can see in our region, for example, Afghanistan, and the countries like Pakistan lifting up, but certainly going in the right direction. Countries like China, where there is a lot more progress, Australia, New Zealand. So there is a mixed bag of progress, but certainly the progress is in the right direction. But certainly on sanitation, if you look on the map below, then sanitation is not as progressed as the water supply. And that's where the challenge is still there. Let's look into what about the hygiene. And that's where I would refer you to SCAP's SDG Gateway portal. And let's look into 6.2.1 indicator, which is with water security. And here we first look into hand washing facilities on the premises. This is the data up to 2017. And if you look on the portal, that's what is available, because it's not so easy to collect such information. So certainly up to maybe it's increasing, but still less than 50% hand washing facilities. Another big challenge for water managers, people linked with the water cycle, is the open defecation still being practiced in rural as well as in urban areas. It is going down. In some countries, it's come close to zero, but if you look at the whole region, or proportion of population practicing open defecation is a big challenge. That's the challenge for water supply. That's the challenge for environment. That's the challenge for the overall health of the communities. Imagine a person infected with COVID and going for open defecation, and imagine the kind of risks it will pose to the population around. Well, let's also look into some good examples. So today we are hosted by Japan Water Forum, and if you look into the progress of Japan on safe drinking water and on safely managed water and sanitation, 100%, very good. But not every country is Japan, as we know. So if we look into Australia, for example, water supply 100%, safely managed water and sanitation, especially hand washing facilities, which is 100% for Japan. Maybe it's growing and improving, but there are few people who are still left behind. If we continue to look into same trends for China, for example, water supply, very good trends, but on hand washing facilities, critical in the urban as well as in rural areas, maybe still there are people who need more access to hand washing facilities on premises, and this is an area which is missing. And if you look into Philippines, for example, in Philippines, I'm sure there would be colleagues who have joined us from Philippines, and we look into safely managed drinking water, still not close to leaving no one behind. We have a big challenge going all the way through to water supply, and that's where the role for not only cities like Manila, but we have to take it to smaller cities, and we have to take it to everyone. And also the hand washing facility is not a very high number. So you can also imagine if COVID situation, whether people have the hand washing facilities where they are or as they go about doing some of the work in their life. Let's look into the numbers from the hygiene part now. And I have highlighted before on the indicators, hygiene is the missing part, is the lagging behind part. Hygiene usually gets only 4% of the total WASH funding. And of course, WASH in schools is includes also hygiene, but the hygiene part is the smaller part. Drinking water, making progress, because of course, if we don't drink water, we don't live. So it is the biggest part out of the WASH cycle, but hygiene remains a challenge, and it's not the biggest part of the total investments. So let's look into how people are going on the hygiene part. And this is again data coming from the WHO related reports, and this is for some of the countries from around the world. If we look into targets by 2030 or targets countries have set up before, then you will see there are these curves which are very steep curves. And like look into our region, Lao PDR, and where we need to go by 2030, we need to accelerate on these targets from in case of Lao, it's more than 3%, but on the whole, from 1 to 21%. So big area still in big trouble. If we continue to look into hygiene, how many of the countries have funding to reach the national hygiene targets? The ones I showed you a few examples. Now look into the world map. First of all, such data is not available so easily. But where the data is available, only 4% of the countries report they have sufficient funding to reach the national hygiene targets. Imagine following COVID, another similar virus erupts, and there are challenges to population. We are not ready for that. So if you look into countries like, for example, Pakistan, they report they have around 50% of what is needed to be able to meet the national hygiene targets. So there is a big challenge, and same applies to countries as big as Indonesia, 260 million people. So we need to think differently about funding models, how can we accelerate through public-private partnerships, and more coming from the private sector into hygiene. Okay, Also, the World Water Development Report has indicated in 2019, much before the COVID crisis, that we have serious challenges from the hand washing part. And there were 70 countries reported. And if you look into Central Asia, Southern Asia, major challenges, the challenges from Western Asia. So we are not close to, anywhere close to 100%. So big challenges. And of course, in the other parts of the world, big challenges as well. This is a stark reminder, the picture. On one side, we have the slums, and the other side, we have the golf courses. Social inequalities. We have to deal with them, and COVID has highlighted the people who are living with the minimum. They have been reduced in the water and sanitation and hygiene to the minimum, and that's where we need to rechart our courses. Also, from the Asia Pacific, the drivers' consequences for water and sanitation and hygiene are very closely linked with our population growth, with our urbanization, with our extreme poverty. Extreme poverty has become even worse than extreme. Income inequalities have become very, very bad. The crime is on the rise in many places because people are not left with many options. Education and employment is a serious challenge. So who are those people who have been left behind? I'm sure by now you know that they are not just in any one country. They're not just one part of Asia. So they can be anywhere from Australia all the way to Central Asia, or they can be from Pakistan to Timor-Leste. So we have these cases everywhere. How do we walk the walk? Not talk the walk the walk. And we do something together, and that's where Asia Pacific Water Forum and its partners can play a big role. And the Asia Pacific Water Summit, which is coming with a lot of political commitment, I have some ideas to share. First of all, we need to carefully look into the DNA of the problem. We need to break it down into looking into rural, urban, also looking from drinking water, from sanitation, and we need to separate the hygiene. And certainly there is a need for multiplying our investments into water. A very simple conclusion from the World Water Development Report is that we need to triple the investments into water by $114 billion to be able to provide only for the urban areas. Triple the investments while we are struggling. So this is a major area which we need to continue to invest. Then also, we need to send this message back that for building back better, socioeconomic part of recovery, it makes sense to invest into water. For every dollar we invest into water, there is $4 return. Economy is slowing down. If we invest into water, I'm sure the economies will recover greener, better, with lesser social inequalities. So that's where payment for ecosystem services for people who are maintaining those catchments. And also, how do we get rid of this open defecation? If we come up with the right kind of incentives, build toilets, pay for ecosystem services for the water supply catchments, put the proper kind of vegetation, maybe this will create new jobs. One health concept needs to be part of water provisions and water financing. Blended finance, governments alone cannot do it. We have to bring the banks as well as the local partnerships. We need to look into South-South cooperation. Countries like Malaysia, for example, helping countries like Timor-Leste, for example. Nations working together with each other. Official development assistance, overseas development assistance need to be targeted differently now during the COVID and after the COVID. Also, innovative financing is critical. And I would like to draw your attention. There are some very interesting models in our region. There is a very important part, what we call in the Muslim part of our region, where there are zakat and fiqh. From zakat, 2.5% coming from the rich people. One of the best investments for that can be to supply water and sanitation and hygiene for those people who have been left behind. And that's the concept of zakat. And also there can be many other modalities. That's where we can mobilize many kind of finance. Also, companies have to go beyond CSR. We need to get rid of plastics. We need to help clean our oceans and the water cycle. So I would think that these greener investments are the way for us to move forward. And I will propose that from Asia Pacific Water Forum, we should start working towards recommendations for the summit for the greener investments, and the work which ADB and others are doing is critical in this regard. So in this whole gamut of things, one thing is very clear: we have to work on participatory approaches, the good governance, the invisible cycle, the invisible part of the water cycle, where we can make sure that those people who have been left behind, we bring them forward and they are part of the solutions. And human rights approach to water supply, water sanitation, hygiene, linking urban and the rural cycles. And the policy have to think very carefully about the finance. Finally, let me put some take-home messages. There is a major change in demand and supply. So from demand from urban and industrial sector goes down, from domestic sector, from homes goes up, but simply the pipes are not enough. They are unable to provide water what is needed. So we have a major challenge. And if there is less demand from the industrial and commercial sector, it means lesser jobs as well. So we have this double whammy. But at the same time, we are in situations where water has to be provided by trucks, so our system is not able to cope with it. Our catchments are not able to cope with our targets related to hygiene. H in wash is missing. As water professionals, I really request you, I appeal you, carefully consider the hygiene part. There is simply insufficient funding into achieving the targets. I showed you the picture of 2019, we are in 2020, and by 2030, the targets we have to achieve. Just the hygiene target, we need to accelerate 1% to 21% per year. This is very big. Asia Pacific is seriously lagging. We have great nations, most advanced nations, but we are also struggling with the issue of least developed countries, small islands, and especially related to the hygiene parts. Also, we need to think about affordable, safe drinking water, decentralized services, providing water as a basic human right. Billions are being left behind, and those billions are in Asia Pacific. And certainly we have to play our role, and as the Asia Pacific Water Forum, we need to stand with the voices of those who have been left behind. And we need to make sure that we work to the level of the targets. It is very easy to talk about SDG 6. It is easy to talk about SDG target, but we need to go to the indicator level. We need to go to the local government level. And that's where we need to carefully think about the economic side and the governance side. And that's where COVID-19, while it is a big disaster, but it is also an opportunity for us to rethink about water, rethink about our systems, are they ready, rethink about the whole cycle. With that, I thank you all, and I will be happy to take any questions facilitated by Ravi. And if you want to follow me, I'm available on Facebook, Twitter, certainly on LinkedIn, and very importantly, with Ms. Yumiko's excellent coordination through Asia Pacific Water Forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Khan. It is very, very informative and useful presentation with evidence. And also, I also thank you so much for your feedback and also suggestion for APWF activity as well as for the fourth APWF. We will definitely take note of your remarks and message, and we will prepare working together with you. Now, we would like to move on to the Q&A session. The Q&A session will be facilitated by our Governing Council Chair, Mr. Ravi Narayanan. Mr. Ravi Narayanan, thank you so much for taking the role for facilitator of today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yumiko. Thank you, Shahbaz. You painted a very somber picture, but also pointed out areas of action that are necessary, that are vital, not just necessary, but are vital for our own public welfare and human rights. Two points that I'd like to ask you. One is, you pointed out the big gap that exists as far as hygiene is concerned, in terms of the lack of investment into hygiene, whether it is pipe water supply for hand washing facilities or anything else. Is this because there is a failure of public communication to highlight the importance of hygiene. Is that one of the issues? And the other issue is science has provided many solutions. You've also talked about the human right to science. Do we need to completely revamp our science education policies such that people become conscious of the need to pay attention to the priorities that you have pointed out? So 2 questions. Public communications and science training.
Yeah. So first of all, why didn't we consider hand washing? Of course, it is part of the consideration for the SDGs, and I've shown you the SDG target 6.2 and the indicator, related indicator. So we thought about it, but the challenge is that it did not follow with the right kind of investment, and it did not create the right kind of awareness. As COVID started, first of all, we all rushed to find the alcohol-based desanitation, the sanitation for sanitizers, and all those shelves were actually empty. When we went there, we cannot find, and the price of sanitizers just went up. So that was the first thing that people thought maybe only alcohol will be able to get rid of these viruses. But very soon, the very clear message also coming from scientists from WHO is soap and water is critical for us. We must wash our hands many times. We should not touch our face, we should not touch our mouth, but at the same time, wash your hands as many times as possible so that the route for the virus to spread is disconnected. So our knowledge improved, but at the same time, it's not only the coronavirus we are dealing with. We have millions of viruses around us. We are infected by flu and whatnot. So certainly hygiene is a very important part of our life. We need to provide hygiene facilities in schools. WASH and UNICEF's excellent work has been going on for quite some time in schools. But overall, in terms of the access to public for WASH from the point of view of hygiene has been limited. So maybe we did not put as much emphasis as water professionals and as colleagues in the policy domain that we must invest more into hygiene. So I think that's where there is a missing link, and I think that's where we can re-emphasize. Water supply has been an area everyone has been emphasizing. Sanitation is an area where we are very aware that we were lagging behind, but we missed the edge. So we need to re-emphasize edge, and we need to continue to go to the full wash, and full wash in the bigger context of the environment and the water cycle, very important. Now coming to the science. As coronavirus hit the world, one of the first reactions is there a cure? And there were many fake cures as well. And many people want a miracle, but the miracle is simply not there. We have to work to find the right answers. And that's where even there is news this week that maybe one of the companies is very close to finding a kind of vaccine which may help with the pandemic. So good news, people feel like there would be a relief, the stock market's going up. But now the question is, which really what Ravi you are asking, the answers are in the science, water science, vaccine science, science related to sustainable living, science related to climate change. But is this science available to everybody? Science is a basic human right, like water is a basic human right. So we have serious digital divides. Even accessing journals is not so easy. Our ability to draw on big data and analyze the big data, that's also a big challenge. So that's where UNESCO started the work on open science. And we brought together top policymakers, including 77 ministers from around the world and also from our region. And everybody said, we need to have open science, precisely what Ravi, you have mentioned. Science should have no borders and no boundaries. We should have free access to all this knowledge, and knowledge about WASH, about governance, about investment. We need that, and also the knowledge about the vaccines, the knowledge which is for better health, the knowledge which is also for creating better jobs through Industrial Revolution 4.0, artificial intelligence and all of that. So that's where UNESCO member states come together and they said there should be an open and transparent process for reaching a consensus on open science. And UNESCO's General Conference is looking forward to the recommendation which is coming from regional consultations. We also have a consultation in Asia Pacific, and the form and shape of this open science and how it should be implemented so science as a basic human right is exercised will continue to November 2021, where it will be approved by UNESCO's General Conference. So certainly this is an area where Asia Pacific Water Forum can also play a big role, and that's what we have been doing together, is to get rid of these artificial divides and bring the knowledge together for nations. And that's where open science, open water science, open water knowledge, a basic understanding of the WASH principles we need to continue. And certainly it is another ignored area. Unless we get rid of these divides, we cannot solve the social inequalities.
Thank you, Shahbaz. Do we have any questions, Yumiko, for Dr. Shahbaz from the participants? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, we have a question from Ms. Mina. She is asking what kind of hygiene measure do you think are prioritized under the limited budget circumstances?
The minimum of the minimum is there should be a water container in every school, in every office, and there should be a bar of soap. That's the basic minimum.
Absolutely.
So when you come, like in my office, if you want to come to UNESCO office Jakarta, we request you to wash your hands. And if you are coming from an area where the boots may be muddy, clean your boots. And then before we think about any other sanitizer, use water and soap. So that's the basic minimum. And unfortunately, that's not available everywhere. In UN premises, in other places, for example, in Timor-Leste, we have been working together to provide such kind of facility. Any school needs that, any office needs that. People going to washrooms, they must very, very clearly wash their hands with soap and water. So this is the basic minimum, and it makes common sense. But as I said, unless you have a tap, or unless you have a container which has the water, unless you have a bar of soap, you cannot exercise your wash right. So we are missing on the full cycle and the availability of water. And imagine those slums where for many days the water is not coming. The water has to be trucked. People have to walk long distances to go and bring water. Do they have the right kind of water supply to be able to do that? Very simple, but in my opinion, not so easy to provide to everyone, because we have missed on these targets and indicators in a very bad way.
Any other questions,
Yes.
Yumiko?
Yes, thank you. Yes. Actually, one question is, SDG 12 and 13 are LED red. Does it mean that they are going down compared to the baseline, despite all the initiative and effort to combat against the climate change?
We are still not there. That's simple as that. To reduce emissions, what do you need? First of all, we need to become more sustainable in our production and consumption. The SDG number 12, if there are polluting industries, they can cause bigger damage than what it is worth in terms of greenhouse emission. Even from the wastewater, the emissions which are coming, which is linked with SDG number 6 from our waterways, which are polluted very badly. All the waste from the houses going in, all the industrial waste going in, the greenhouse emissions which are going, that's really still a very big challenge. And then the link with the human health. Also think about the cities who are dependent on food supplies which are grown surrounding the cities, and many times they are being supplied with these dirty waters. So the link has not been made properly from the supply, demand, consumption side, so SDG number 12. And number 13, from the point of view, how many area do we need under forest? That's very simple question. How much area are we putting in under forests? Forests have very important link with water. Forests have very important link with floods. They are very important link with the microclimate in terms of also the local supplies of water and the water quality. So many of those things are missing. There are pledges, we will put so many millions of hectares of land under forest, but actual areas under forest still missing. Also within cities, we are making new forests or jungles of concrete, and they are too hot. Their colors are not right. They're absorbing a lot of heat. We are using too much of the air conditioning. So we have to come back, and that's where the 1.5 degree target of rise of temperatures, can we achieve it by 2050? If we go to more than 2 degree, 2.5 degree, also linked with the biodiversity, the extinction of species linked with the SDG number 14 and 15 with the marine and the life on land, we are missing on big things. If you look into IUCN's red list and the SDG number 15, most countries have not done their homework yet. And 2030 is only tomorrow. So that's where the challenge is. And when the resources are limited, where will you start? And we must first take smaller steps. Today I showed you one smaller step: provide a bucket of water and a soap to everyone. And to be able to provide that, you maybe need a pipeline. But that pipeline is connected also to a catchment where there may be open defecation and there may be serious challenges for the environment. We need to think bigger in a systems way. We also need to think about investments which can create more jobs immediately and which can protect our health much more quicker than others. So we have to prioritize, and that's the role of the policy think tanks like APWF, where we should show if we are missing, where we are lagging. This is the baseline, and we must start from these baby steps to make the giant leaps. And how can we take the whole world together through SDG number 17, also through international cooperation?
Thank you. Can we have more, can you kindly respond to two more questions? Firstly, we are having the question from Bangladesh. Running pipeline water is essential for hand washing to protect COVID-19. But the coverage of running water in rural water is less than urban area. But in the experience of Bangladesh, that is COVID-19 patient is more in urban area compared with rural. Is it not contradictory? Another question is, what are the best greener recovery pathway to cleaner and save water for future? Thank you so much for responding to these questions.
Okay, that's where. Sorry, dear Ravi.
No, those will be the last questions, and then
yes, absolutely.
Okay. Coverage of running water in the rural areas is less than the urban, but it is experienced that COVID is more in urban areas. Again, I would say we should not generalize things. Dear Muhammad Ikramul Haq, thank you for your question. I also see it on the Q&A box. Water and sanitation is a very important part of the whole equation. But let's say I wash all the time my hands, but I am within less than 2 meters distance to my colleagues all the time. I'm in very congested spaces, like in urban slums. Maybe more than 7-8 people have to live together, even within a very small space. The chances are much higher for those people living in congested areas to get the coronavirus. Whereas in rural areas, of course, the space is bigger. And people can afford to stay away from each other, so that maybe there are other factors. I'm saying we are not generalizing here, but certainly wash is a very important part and very basic part of preventing and cutting the cycle of the coronavirus. Because if we are cleaning and washing our hands, you come to the office, you are touching any surfaces, you don't leave your fingerprints and you don't leave the virus for somebody else to come and touch it and get the virus again. So from certainly your question is very pertinent. We need to carefully think about all the pathways, and corona is not the only thing in our life. Corona is one of the pandemics and it will be over with all the good science and the good efforts everyone in the world is putting together, and especially the innovation of human mind and the creativity and the work which is being done by the scientists, we will overcome. But these things will come again. We will have many of these challenges again. Our biggest challenge is not, in my view, Corona. Our biggest challenge in the world is social inequalities. Only a few percent people, less than 1% owning more than 40% of world's wealth, and less than 1% of the wealth owned by or more than 50% of the poor people. You can imagine the social inequalities. People who are paying more and they do not get the service. So we need to carefully think, where should we focus? What are the steps which need to be taken? We need to carefully look into every one of the problems is different. Every one of the water issues, while the generic form is different, maybe same, but the specifics change from one city to the next city, from one catchment to the next catchment. We need to carefully look into our issues, and we need to think about how do we solve those problems, bringing together the best knowledge, the academia, the local indigenous knowledge, people who are interested in solving the problems, the politicians, as well as making sure we bring the people with the money, and looking also for innovative financing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yumiko, do you want me to make some remarks before Shahbaz wraps up? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you very much. So Shahbaz has explored a very wide terrain, and a number of big issues have come up. He has repeatedly pointed out to us that hygiene is not just for COVID, but for general well-being and health. And hygiene is something where we need to put our minds to. He's also talked about, it's not just facilities, but it's attitude also. Do we care about our people? Do we prioritize those who have less than us? You know, so facilities plus attitude, leading to attention to specific areas and problems that can be solved in a contextual manner. So these are big ideas, and there are many buzzwords that come, buzz expressions. Open science is one. That is, science is a human right. It's not just confined to a few people, but it should be widely available so that people behave in a responsible and caring manner, not just for themselves, but for each other. Big ideas, big challenges, but big possibilities as well, if we put our minds to it. So thank you very much, Shahbaz. That was a very inspiring address that you gave us. Some very, very innovative ideas. Now it's up to us to take it forward. You can say what needs to be said, but we need to practice what needs to be practiced. Thank you very, very much. Now I leave it to you.
Okay, thank you very much, dear Ravi. If I can just make a couple of statements following your excellent analysis and feedback. First of all, we are very grateful we are alive today. We are very grateful we have come to this level of development in the human history. And one of the greatest developments is the development of our mind to be able to think differently, to be able to take a systems view, our ability to link with each other, our ability to listen to each other. And certainly this Zoom webinar is one of those ways where we have started to be connected even more while the air traffic is almost to nothing. So we have been living on this planet Earth because of human creativity and about our consciousness, about thinking bigger than ourselves. COVID has posed a big threat to our existence. It has posed a big threat to our economies, the ways we live, but certainly it has given us an opportunity to sit back, carefully think, and see where should we go. So from the point of view of water, we need to very carefully think about where are the key entry points from water, sanitation, and hygiene. Today, I've tried to illustrate that if you look into SDG portal of UN SCAP, very excellent data there contributed from the nations. We are moving forward on water supply. Sanitation is improving, but we have missed in a very big way on hygiene. Unless we provide hygiene, we will not be able to solve many of the health-related issues. And also, there are big issues in terms of people who have a lot and people who have very little. People living in slums. There has been major disruption to urban supplies in big cities. There are people from within the water industry who have been partially working from home. Water metering is a big challenge, but at the same time, we also need to think about those people who didn't get water. We need to carefully think about how do we make investments into the area of water, and that's not just a few individuals. We have to work with the consciousness of the nations. And I've highlighted from the World Water Development Report numbers, we need to triple investments into water. This is the time to think that $1 invested in water on the average returns $4. If we are looking for recovery of our economies, one of the best places is to start from water, missing links in hygiene, more South-South cooperation, and that's where we can create more jobs. At the same time, we create a better planet for everyone. And also, lastly, I would like to highlight every part of the water cycle has something unique where we are. And that's where we need to bring the hidden part of the water cycle, the water governance, which is basically all stakeholders come together, they co-realize the problem, they co-find the solutions, they work together, and that's where also the work which we have been doing with Japan Water Agency for the integrated water resources management, very critical. We should bring that back towards moving higher on the spiral. Lastly, my request to Asia Pacific Water Forum and partners, we should take a step back, carefully look into these lessons as we move towards more political will. At this time, with the Asia Pacific Water Summit coming up, we should carefully start bringing the benchmark data, entry pathways, working together, and carefully look into policy briefs which can help guide governments. And this is the time where we need more North-South, South-South cooperation, leaving no one behind. Also think innovatively about financing. And there are many opportunities in this world with philanthropy, with the businesses. If we work together, we will be able to have a better planet as well as a better life for people. And we will have better economies, more resilient economies. Thank you very much, dear Yumiko, for giving me the chance to come and present today.
Yes, Professor Shahbaz Khan, thank you so much for your very, very clear takeaway message to us. That is very important for us for our resilient, sustainable, and inclusive future for our current generation and also next generation. I also thank you for Ravi to facilitate this webinar and also asking a very, very important question to Shahbaz Khan that also assists us for more understanding and also what action we need to do for the future. Thank you so much for your contribution to this third APWF webinar. I also thank you for all audience to joining this third APWF webinar. This Professor Shahbaz Khan's presentation document will be updated on our APWF webinar, our APWF website. And this webinar is recorded, and that will be also available from our website. So it will be good, very, very helpful and appreciate if you can kindly review this document, this and webinar, and also ask circulate this information to your network. I thank you so much. Thank you so much for your participation. And last but not least, I would like to introduce next our fourth APWF webinar. Our next fourth APWF webinar will be organized on 26 November, 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. on Japan time. The speaker is Dr. Tokil Clausen. He is the International Water Advisor and chairing Scientific Program Committee of World Water Week in Stockholm World Water Week, and also chairs Action Platform for Source to Sea Management. He will introduce integrated water resource management from source to sea, linking the water SDG 6 and ocean SDG 14. this more detailed information and also registration URL will be introduced you by email. And this information will be also updated on our APWF website. I hope you can continuously join our APWF webinar. I thank you so much for today. And finally, I also finally thank you for Professor Shahbaz and also our APWF Governance Chair, Mr. Ravi Naraya. Thank you so much for your kind cooperation. We are very looking forward to working together for successful APWS and also for improved water security in Asia and the Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yumiko. Thank you, Ravi. And thank you to all people who attended and put many, many nice comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for everyone.
Okay. So, bye-bye to everyone.